The next session is Who Controls the Story Controls the Future. Now, storytelling is arguably one of the oldest things that humans have indulged in, which helped us understand, the difference between fact, fiction, and if there's an election coming up, there's the concept of deep fake storytelling, and who knows what that means. Here us to help us understand it, who controls the story, controls the future, is an amazing panel led by Stephen Kahn, the Global Executive Director of The Conversation. If you've not seen The Conversation, go and see The Conversation because Stephen is an OG in media. Please welcome Stephen and his panel to the stage. Woo!
Thanks, man.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Eric. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here today. We've got a fantastic panel. I wonder if we can just do some quick introductions, starting with Kristen.
I'm Kristen Jones-Hill, and I have been a producer and studio executive for pretty much all of my career.
Hi, Kristen. I'm Easy, like Sunday morning spelled differently. I'm a venture capital investor focused on entertainment tech. I was previously a general partner at Google Ventures, and we're backed by a bunch of media and entertainment companies.
Hello, I'm Seth Hallen. I'm managing director of Light Iron, which is a film and television post-production company based in Hollywood. I'm also president of the Hollywood Professional Association, and just recently an investor in early stage companies related to AI in media and entertainment.
And as Eric said, my name's Stephen Kahn, and I work for a project called theconversation.com. Once upon a time, I was a journalist. I was specifically, for a number of years, a news editor. And that role, some of you may know, within the newspaper world, does actually give you considerable control over the story. In the newsroom, I would listen to pitches for stories from reporters, and we would sit in a small room where a group of us would essentially decide what the narrative would be for our news organization. And after a little while, I guess 20 years or so, I became fearful that this was actually somewhat limiting the story, particularly regarding the research community, the global research community. And I became aware of a potential venture, not-for-profit venture, to shed light on academic research by taking that research to a broad public audience at a time of importance for that research, for those individual researchers, when it would be of maximum value to an international readership. And that became The Conversation, which we launched, I think, about 12 years ago, 11 years ago in the UK, and it now has 7 editions around the world and reaches about 50 million people a month, and about 100,000 academic researchers, possibly slightly more now, have now written for The Conversation. So in a sense, I feel we were part of a movement that really did change who controlled the story for a certain group of people. And I'm really fascinated to hear what this panel thinks about the next phase of technological development. Will it liberate people? Will it allow more people to tell their story? Or do we risk a situation where actually the zone is so flooded with counter-narratives and multiple narratives that actually the story, the truth becomes unclear, and perhaps a very small handful of people are ultimately in control? I'd be really keen to hear what all of you think. You come from very different backgrounds. Kristen, why don't you kick things off?
Well, my career has pretty much been based on choosing various stories and then deciding to deploy, whether it be in, single digit or hundreds of millions of dollars to get those stories to various screens. So I, of course, am going to come from the point of view that I think the story and creativity is always going to remain steadfast and important. I think, obviously, with the advent of AI, the question is going to be who controls your story and who's allowed to take facets of your story and potentially use them against your will, as there's already some cases that have become, evident in Hollywood, like the Scarlett Johansson with her voice likeness and whatnot. So I think, look, it's still early days in terms of, AI and whatnot, but I would like to believe that creative storytelling is always going to be, a constant, and that people will always come up with ideas, and hopefully they'll have forums in which they can tell those stories.
Thank you. Easy.
Yeah, I think that Kristen is spot on. I think that creative storytelling and quality is always going to have room. What AI is doing is essentially democratizing who can create content and how content gets created. And what we're seeing is a dramatic reduction in cost for creating video, images, text, etc. I think technology on its own, it's not good or bad. It's more like how we use it. And unfortunately, in this case, we've seen both. Like, we've seen great advances in AI serve to advance healthcare, education, expand creativity, but at the same time, you can, create false narratives, deep fakes, and impersonate people, and use it to create a false narrative. So, I think we're in the early days of how the technology gets used, but at the core of it, generative AI is about creating content, right? Like putting words together, creating video without the camera, etc. And that creates also very interesting opportunities where I'm excited to invest in, for example, when it comes to the creation of video games or the creation of scalable video, which is going to be 95% of the web's traffic in just 2 years' time.
Seth.
We had a little pre-game discussion a week or so ago, and we were all in agreement, and we said, well, we can't agree on everything, and that makes a boring panel, but we are. I can't disagree with anything that's been said. Storytelling is essential part of humanity. I always like to say how cave paintings were the first time humans brought images on their living room walls, and you can map cave paintings all the way to the visual stories we watch today. Really, it's just been an evolution. And so we love stories as human beings. We love hearing stories. We love telling stories. And so we enjoy them very much, but we're also susceptible to them, because they are part of humanity. And so I think the question is, I agree that this technology has always and will continue to democratize the ability to tell these visual stories, but it's a matter of trying to understand who is being democratized. Is it the big corporations? Is it the big social network, platforms? That's something Daniel and I have talked about. Or is it the individuals? So through the years, a lot of the technology that has been needed to make movies, for example, make television shows, is pretty sophisticated stuff. And in some cases, it takes years and years for people to learn how to use this technology, because it is complex stuff. That's changing with AI in particular, and that could be good or bad, right? It unleashes and unlocks potentially a whole new generation, a whole new segment of the human population to be able to tell stories, but that's for better or for worse, isn't it? And at the same time, it helps enable the big corporations as well. So it is such a fascinating conversation, and I think the journey is about trying to do, at least from my perspective, for us to do what we can to try to find the best path forward and the sustainable path forward for society in general.
I wonder if I might just press a little bit further on that core point to all three of you. And it is, it is the first line of the title of this discussion. Who controls the story? Who do you think controls the story in this phase of development that we are now in? It may be easy, you can come in on that.
One interesting topic that we touched on in the pre-discussion is the fact that how jobs are changing, right? And of course, in the past, the entertainment industry was responsible for most of the stories, and those high-quality stories got created in studios by people that were hired to do the specific job, and it took a lot of people to do this specific job. And then for the past few years, with the advent of the internet and social networks, etc., we've been seeing the rise of the creator economy. And the creator economy is essentially people who are able to monetize their passion or their expertise, but the way that they do it is by selling content. Now, AI has been instrumental in helping more people become creators, and in that sense, it's good, right? Like there's an unlimited appetite for content. People will always, if they're able to create an audience, they will find a way to make money out of it. However, today, only the top 2% of creators make any sort of money. But the number of people that are trying and want to be creators, I think I saw a recent survey that showed ask kids what they want to be when they grow up. They used to say that they wanted to be astronauts. Now they want to be a YouTube creator. So the number of people creating content has gone up. I think that the amount of content is going to go up exponentially, but it's still not 100% possible to make money out of it. So who owns the story? I think today the story is getting more distributed, more disaggregated, but at the same time, there's not a single owner. It's more like who owns the audience, who has distribution, and to an extent, it's still the media companies in the industry, and also maybe YouTube and other broadcasting platforms, but creators are getting more and more power.
Kristen, do you fancy being a YouTube creator?
I don't personally know, but I understand the allure of it for many people, and I think I completely agree with everything you said. I think, but also further to your point, it's also about, I think this is where distribution and curation play a huge role. I mean, obviously YouTube is not a curator, they just put things out there, but it's up to the audience to find something and discover it and decide that they want to actually, really indulge in it. Whereas other studios and television networks or, even streamers all just put up a bunch of projects for you and then it's up to you, but they obviously are curating by virtue of even having that stuff on their platform. And so I think that's really where part of the control of the story is coming from at this point, is actually having access to tell it.
Seth, do you see an empowered audience or empowered creators or a very small group of people?
The creator community for sure is becoming more and more empowered by this technology. I mean, to be able to have writing assistants, to be able to have generative AI tools enable you to do concepting visually, and of course sound and music applications are exploding. So there's so many ways that people can create these stories in meaningful ways now more powerfully than ever. I think you touched on something easy about monetization, and we talked a little bit about that. That's in the traditional film and television industry, that is a huge issue right now. It's been very significantly disrupted, the economics and the full supply chain of creating content and then distributing it and monetizing it has been terribly disrupted. I'm sure everybody's aware of the strikes that went on last year. Those were a symptom of a much bigger problem, which is what I'm talking about. So I like to think, and I hope this is the case, that these next generation and frontier technologies can help enable a more sustainable economic ecosystem for storytelling, and especially traditional film and television, but really across all of visual storytelling in general, including for the creator community.
And maybe just to follow up with you on that point again, do you feel that there are specific opportunities within the entertainment industry for new businesses built around this kind of technology?
Absolutely. And in fact, personally, I'm trying to put myself in positions to really be there to understand what young companies, entrepreneurs, visionaries are building to that end, and I do see an opportunity for investment and support to go into those young companies, and then, of course, help them get connected and help them win in the market once those bets have been placed. So I feel very confident that there are answers in there, and that there are some nascent companies and some real visionary thinkers that are emerging that are going to help us fix that problem.
I would argue even that it's already happening to a degree. I think I gave an example when we had our little pre-conversation. I'm working on a television show right now in Israel. Obviously, it's in Hebrew, and obviously we needed it translated so everybody that's working on it could see it. And we used AI as the initial translator because it's expensive and it's time-consuming, and it didn't do a brilliant job. In fact, there were a lot of words that were mangled and, somewhat unintelligible, but it did the job well enough, and I think it will only get better. And I think that's just one example of just a tiny example of how AI is going to become more helpful to everybody. I would not want to be a translation services company right now because I'm not quite sure about their future.
Easy.
So that's a $1 million question, right? Like, are there new businesses that can leverage these technologies and create new industries, perhaps? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. Today, most of the investment has been focused on the foundational models and the infrastructure. You can argue that NVIDIA captured a lot of that value on like the GPU level, and then on one level above you have the foundational LLMs. But the next level is going to be the application layer. And what if you could completely reinvent the old way of doing things and completely change the cost structure, reach new audiences, monetize content in different ways. To touch one point Kristen made on translation, I talked to a company that does localization of content where they say, like, okay, you already have content that works pretty well in English. Let me take the burden of translating it, and I'm going to distribute it for you all over the world in Hindi and in Russian and in German, or I don't know if those are the best examples, but that's already happening. The other thing is generative AI for video and the ability to train an LLM to, you probably have seen the video of Reid Hoffman interviewing his AI clone. He trained an LLM on everything he's ever written, all the books, all the podcasts, all the articles, and then he has a conversation with his AI self. So who's to say in the future you won't be able to have this interaction, like very personal interaction with people, dead or alive, and educate yourself or entertain yourself in different ways?
We shouldn't pretend there's no risk. Just before we came on, you did actually say, Easy, that of course there are copyright issues. Maybe just quickly, maybe you can just say a very quick word about that. I think we've got about 20 seconds.
Yeah,
left.
so very, very quickly, there's a lot of theft happening. And I think content owners should be compensated fairly. And regulation is obviously a bit slow to step in. But the music companies, for example, are suing Suno right now because the training data is obviously based on copyright infringement. Similar with Sora, which most likely trained the data on publicly available YouTube videos. So that's why enterprise, I think, is a bit slow to lean in because they are afraid to entangle themselves with something that is illegal. So as consumers, we enjoy it. It's like magic. These technologies are incredible. But to use it and monetize it, we need to be responsible for the content owners and creators.
Thanks very much, and thanks very much to all three of you for a really fascinating insight into that world. Thanks for listening.